The basic gist of the formula, and by formula I mean not just herbal, but dietary and lifestyle, is going to be predicated on the pulse. Now, I'm going to have some pretty weak or strong suspicions based on the pulse, and I'm going to corroborate those with what the eyes and the tongue say, and then I'm going to corroborate those with just flat out asking them, hey, do you get hot or cold? Are you easily thirsty? Do you have dry skin off? Or do you get cold feet? Really, within the first 10 minutes of an appointment, I've pretty much got 90% of what I need to make a good intervention plan.
Welcome to the Learn Skin podcast with me, Dr. Raja.
And me, Dr. Hadar, where we discuss all things skin.
Join us as we delve into the art and science of skin health in today's episode.
Hey, Raja, can you say the thing I told you to tell them?
Of course. We are board-certified dermatologists. This podcast is meant for educational and informational purposes only and is not considered medical advice, nor does it serve as a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. All opinions shared do not express the views of Learn Health, Inc. Let's get to the good stuff. Well, hello, everyone. It's going to be just me, Raja, today. Hadar is away, probably taking a nap or sleeping because he's got nothing better to do. But no, I'm just kidding. So today we're talking about herbals and a little bit of traditional Chinese medicine, but really we're talking to a really cool Renaissance guy who's got his own compounding apothecary and clinic. And he just gave me a video tour before we started this podcast. So I wanted to introduce Oscar Sierra, and he is the founder and head practitioner of Sierra Botanica and Collaborative Medicine. It's a full service compounding apothecary and clinic out in the greater metro area in Atlanta, Georgia. So welcome to the podcast, Oscar, and I'm super excited to talk to you.
Thank you, sir. I'm excited to be here, and I wish that it could be like a call-in show where people called and challenged me somehow.
You know what? Maybe that'll be a future idea because that would be pretty fun to do. But, before we jump into all the cool things that you're doing, can you give us a little bit of a background into how you got into the space? What got you thinking in this direction of, treatment and clinic and health?
I was hungry. It's literally what happened. I knew that I wanted to help people and be in some kind of healing modality when I went to college at UGA, the University of Georgia here, because the Hope Scholarship, because that's my parents didn't have a whole lot of money and I needed to get some education. So I wrote on the Hope Scholarship to University of Georgia, barely got in. I needed to find a major. My first love is music. So initially I thought I'll do music therapy, somehow kind of weave music into what I wanted to do, which is some form of health modality. And then my dormitory, well, I forgot to sign up for the dorm, so I was living on a couch for the first week of college. And then every day I'd show up to the housing office and say, do you guys have my dorm ready? And they said, no, we don't have anything, keep waiting. They got sick of seeing my face, so they put me in to a room that was meant for one person with two people, but it was like for handicap access, so it was on the first floor, and it was adjoining the dining hall. So I finally was able to gain some weight in college. It was on the meal plan and I could eat whatever I wanted. And I was, I would ride my bike down the hallway directly into the meal plan place whenever I wanted and just ate a lot of calories, and I liked food. So I figured, my background's in martial arts and I really enjoyed physical movement. And we all know that exercise is good for you, and that's one way to help your health. And another way is, herbs and supplements. Another way is, probably meditation and, some kind of spiritual practice. But I also knew that I could go pretty much days or weeks without doing any of those and been pretty okay, but I couldn't go more than like 5 hours without thinking about what's for dinner or lunch or breakfast. So I figured I'd start there. So I got my degree in nutrition science at University of Georgia. And then the food thing, the martial arts and the food thing ended up combining in Chinese medicine. And that ended up turning into more of a study in herbal medicine. And that ended up being a study in functional medicine and oncology and genomics and genetics and metabolism and the microbiome stuff and all the things that tie into it. And bada bing, bada boom, I started compounding a couple things. And then my 4 tinctures turned into 150 tinctures, and my 3 or 4 mint, tulsi, and green tea turned into an apothecary of over 150 raw bulk herbs. And I started compounding more nebulizers and suppositories and rectal and vaginal suppositories and creams and lotions and potions and tinctures and glycerites and shrubs and infusions and decoctions, and because A, it's fun, and B, it works. and it's customized. I'm making recipes for people based on their specific condition, constitution, and environment.
No, I love it. And I wanted to ask you a question for starters. You're a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild. What was involved in becoming a registered herbalist? And I'm sure that really expanded your knowledge base around herbs too.
Yeah, I like the AHG, the American Herbalist Guild, because they're not just into Western herbs or Chinese herbs. They open their arms to anyone with a lineage of knowledge. And to become a registered herbalist, you have to show that lineage and, hours worth of study. And if it's African herbs, cool, prove that you really know African herbs with a lineage of study. If it's Chinese herbs, that's fine too. But their conferences are non-exclusive to one modality. And so you go and you end up learning a little bit about a lot of different traditions, and you see how much overlap there is, which is really interesting.
I love the point that you made, which was that people are different and they're unique. So, how do you approach, and it doesn't have to be just about the skin, but how do you approach assessing someone? And then, what's your overall approach when you're thinking about compounding?
My approach is I have my patients not tell me anything before I feel their pulse. I don't want to know what they think. I don't want to know what their doctor thinks. I don't even want to know what I think because it interferes with the diagnostic process, in my humble opinion. So I want to know all those things later, but the first thing I want to do is make sure they're comfortable and make sure that they went to go pee pee or whatever, and have them some tea or water for them. Let them chill out for a second, and then I ask if I can feel their pulse, look at their tongue, and look at their eyeballs. And I make notes about it, and I say, would you like to see my notes about your tongue, your pulse, and your eyeballs?
What are you looking for in there, Oscar? What are you looking for in the pulse, in the eyes, and on the tongue?
I'm looking for clues to balance. So is it too fast or too slow, too staccato, too long? Are the eyeballs red or pale or jaundiced or dry? Or they, when I pull the eyelids down, do they bulge out like a bullfrog neck? Or are they concave or convex? Is the pulse strong or weak? Is it thick? Is it thin? Is it bulgy? Is it bowstring? Is it floating up towards the top of the skin superficially? Is it deep down towards the bone? How strongly do I need to press with my fingertips to find the pulse? That tells me what's going on. Based on their pulse alone, if I'm just a freaking good on the ball clinician, I really should be able to come up with an intervention without even hearing peep from them about, oh, well, I'm not sleeping very well and my kneecap itches. I should be able to just figure it out on my own. So partly I do it to test my clinical chops. Partly I do it just to give people a break from having to do anything and just let them relax because, the traffic here in Atlanta sucks. And, they don't know where they're going, or they're,
Right.
they come a little anxious. They think that they're going to a doctor's office and they're like, oh, they're all nervous and stuff. And then they're like, oh, it's just a dude that served me some tea and I don't have to do anything for the next 5 minutes. He's just kind of feeling my pulse. It's a nice experience. So, and yeah, I still ask them, why they're there. But I don't know if it's a hangnail or cancer as to why they're coming in right off the bat. So that's the first step, is I just have that connection with them, have some nice quiet time, and then the trust. I tell them, oh, you're probably not sleeping very well, are you? I can feel that on the pulse. Or, did you have any breakfast today? They're like, no. How did you know? I'm like, well, because your pulse is completely empty in this spleen position and it's really wimpy. If it's really big and bulgy, I'm like, did you just have like some cheese and bacon for breakfast? And they're like, yes, I did. And then they think it's pretty cool that I can somehow figure that out, even though they haven't said anything and I haven't looked at their chart and I don't even know why they're there. So now we have trust. And that is the most powerful intervention that any clinician, be it Ayurvedic or Western conventional or Chinese medicine or voodoo or whatever it is trust.
Oscar, I think this discussion around the pulses is very interesting to me because in Ayurveda, we check the pulse. And just to kind of lay the groundwork, normally in Western and conventional medicine, the way the pulse goes is we're looking at rate, rhythm. That's about it. That's where it stops. And there's so much more to a pulse, isn't there? Like you said, the bounding nature of it, how full it feels, how deep it feels. Does it feel ethereal or weak? Does it feel strong? They also talk about like how it pulses up to the top, how it bounds back down to the bottom. So there's so many other like aspects to the pulse that you get trained on, and people in traditional Chinese or whether it's Ayurveda, or people that just realize that there's more hidden in that pulse than just rate and rhythm. I appreciate you bringing this up.
Well, some of it takes years and thousands of pulses to be able to decipher, but some of it is really not that hard. Like a novice beginner can kind of tell the difference between a thick pulse and a thin pulse, or a deep pulse or a superficial pulse. Like it's really not that hard.
Yeah, and actually your point is such a good one. In the Ayurvedic perspective, when you feel a pulse, if you feel an ethereal pulse, that gives you clues to their mental stress or maybe their state of hydration. Of course, that's the basic thing. But also like it gives you insight into maybe if they deal with like what kind of foods they're eating or just kind of their tendencies. Is it the same principle?
Absolutely.
So now you've got the pulse, you've looked at their eyes, you looked at their tongue, and obviously hours and hours of experience comes into play, right? It's not just like you're peering. I mean, you're actually looking, you're not just viewing, you know? So, and then you've done that. How do you approach the compounding aspect of things? I mean, there's so many factors in here. I think we'll just dip into the compounding piece of things. How do you decide how you're going to do the compound, what the backbone of the compound is going to be? What are some of the factors you take into account? And say it's something with the skin. Could you walk us through an example of how you might approach it?
Yeah, I mean, the strongest bit of evidence that I have is going to be the pulse, because the pulse never lies. You know, maybe they scrape their tongue, maybe they just drank some coffee or ate some turmeric and their tongue is yellow, or made out with a Smurf and it's blue, whatever it is. But that, you know, their pulse doesn't lie. No. So the basic gist of the formula, and by formula I mean not just herbal, but dietary and lifestyle, is going to be predicated on the pulse. Now I'm going to have some pretty weak or strong suspicions based on the pulse, and I'm going to corroborate those with what the eyes and the tongue say, and then I'm going to corroborate those with just flat out asking them, hey, do you get hot or cold? Are you easily thirsty? Do you have dry skin off? And do you get cold feet? Really, within the first 10 minutes of an appointment, I've pretty much got 90% of what I need to make a good intervention plan. The rest of it is just kind of discussing what do they want, because maybe they're interested in something else entirely, and I have to negotiate, you know, what they want with what I think will bring balance to their system, or just hearing about, you know, their mom and dad or family history or whatever else, which is fine. It can play into the formula a bit, but really the backbone I already know. Like say their pulse is fast and it's staccato and it's elevated up towards the surface of the skin rather than the bone, and their tongue is red and their eyeballs are red, and I see that, you know, they're wearing a tank top in the middle of December here in Atlanta, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this person has some heat going on. So I've already kind of determined, you know, is the heat in the interior or exterior? Is it in the liver or the spleen or the kidneys or whatever? So I've already kind of got my head thinking about formulas that target this type of heat. And I ask them, hey, do you run hot? They're like, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. And do you have hot flashes and night sweats? Yes, I do that also. Okay, great. So I've already narrowed down my formulas down to maybe 2 or 3. And then I just ask them a couple questions and narrow it down to the one, which I then compound with a little this, a little that, because they also have some itchiness, not just heat. So I put some herbs in there to clear some what we call wind. And then I say, hey, when's the last time you went to the doctor? Oh yeah, I hate doctors. Great. I'm not one of them. How do you feel about this? Oh yeah, this feels good. When was the last time you got some blood work done? Oh yeah, 20 years ago. Oh, okay, we should like check some stuff. So they're like, all right, I can do that.
What kind of blood work do you check, Oscar? Can I ask? Like, what do you typically check?
So it's different for everyone, but I'll give you my foundational baseline panel for people. It's going to be a CMP, a CBC, uric acid, LDH, NMR lipids panel to see how small, dense, dangerous their lipids and their MPO, LP(a), LPPLA2 to see about their arteries. And then I ask them about their teeth. That's something I've been doing a whole lot more. I'm going to digress. Let me finish telling you my basic panel. Vitamin D, all the stuff that I mentioned, CRP, zinc, magnesium, and homocysteine. And I think I've pretty much, thyroid, free T3, total T4, reverse T3. With women, it's usually the first time I check for TPO and T-thyroid globulin antibody. And so both thyroid antibodies, thyroid function, testosterone, men and women, free and total. And often with peri or postmenopausal women, I'll check prednisone, DHEA, and estrogens, estradiol and estrogen sulfate.
Do your patients take insurance? Are they usually insured, or are they paying out of pocket typically for these labs?
We work with a lab company that does the insurance billing. So thank God I don't need to touch any of that. So if they want to run it through insurance, we're able to help them do that. But I don't submit it. And they don't have to submit it either, which is pretty awesome. They just submit their insurance information. So, but a lot of patients would rather, even if they have insurance, would rather do it outside of insurance because it'll end up being cheaper. But to answer your question, I work with both insured population as well. I mean, I work at a homeless shelter also. They're definitely uninsured. And it's a different setting and scenario. So you got to figure out cheap ways to get it done.
When it comes to the compounds, what are some of your choices and how might you approach it? Say you see someone with a skin rash, what would be the approach that you might take? And say it's like eczema, for example.
So like eczema has many different flavors of eczema, right? Is it itchy? Is it red? Is it raised? Is it swollen? Is it flaky? What's the color? Does it get purple? All those things guide me to whether it's going to be wind or damp or hot and damp or hot and wind or hot wind damp or blood stasis. So, I figure out the diagnostic and then I occasionally have to go look at the book and be like, okay, what are the formulas that clear heat, drain dampness, and eliminate wind? Well, you got the option of these three. And so I figure out, well, which one predominates, the heat, the wind, or the dampness? And then I choose the one that's most appropriate. And then I add a little of this or a little of that based upon, oh, by the way, I also have diarrhea.
Yeah, obviously you're taking other things into account too, aren't you? Other symptoms. It's not just the skin.
No, I mean, the skin is just a presentation of what's going on inside. So the skin is just the marquee of who's playing at the Georgia Theater. That's a Athens, Georgia reference. But yeah, I mean, I'm you got to treat the whole person. So, but the skin is just a clue as to what's going on inside.
Now, and what are the common herbs that you end up using? Like if you are using herbs or tinctures, whatever it is, do you have a couple that obviously you're going to personalize, but are there a couple that you seem to be your personal favorites that you end up using in a lot of your formulations?
If I'm talking about skin, then yes. I have to say that sea buckthorn is one of my favorite, both topical and internal, because it's really high in omega-7s, which is a great nourishing inflammatory mediating compound that goes to the skin in particular. It has a tropism. So, chrysanthemum tends to clear heat in the eyes. Sea buckthorn tends to clear heat in the skin.
It tastes great too, by the way. A little tangy, but tastes great.
Yeah, not bad. So that internally and topically, anytime there's any kind of heat or redness on the skin, I dial in sea buckthorn somewhere, either internal or topically or both. The other one that's one of my favorites that's internal and in the realm of food/medicine is Job's tears. Sigmund lacrymae jobai, koix.
Really?
Koix seed, aka hatamugi, or yulmu in Korean, hatamugi in Japanese, or Job's tears in English, or yi ren in Chinese. I use it both internally and topically, especially for damp conditions. And by damp, I mean that the skin manifestation is raised, or that it is oozy, or that there is digestive gas and bloating, or that I pull down the eyelids and have the person look up towards the ceiling and their eyelids bulge out like a bullfrog neck. That is fluids not moving. That is dampness. So this is an herb that has a tropism for the skin and lungs and large intestine, which is kind of the realm of where skin is energetically. And, it tastes fine. Like, it doesn't taste bad. It doesn't taste good. It doesn't taste like anything, really. So then I give them some recipes of salads, soups, and porridges to make with the Job's tears, and or have them make a tea out of it, or both, and or make a plaster. So, cook it, overcook it, mash it up, and stick it right on the thing that is swollen and oozy on the skin, and it tends to calm it down and dry it up.
You know what I love about your take on this, Oscar, and I think we've had a chance to kind of discuss a few things here, but it's that I think the summary here is that you personalize by assessing people, and you assess based on things that we may have just taken for granted in the conventional space, looking at the eyes, but really looking closely, the tongue, feeling the pulse. And then you personalize, and not only do you give them herbs, but you're giving them options on how to build it into a lifestyle. I love it.
And first and foremost, I try to get them to not make it worse. So I say, I may not be able to make this better, but I'm pretty confident that I can keep you from making it worse.
Right.
If their condition is damp, there's these things that relieve dampness, but there's also some things that just prevent dampness from happening in the first place, like, fried foods, lots of sugar, sweet syrupy stuff. that's damp. So I'm not saying that damp is bad. I'm saying that for someone that is already damp, adding more damp is going to not be good. For someone that runs dry, adding damp is going to bring balance. They need more, good quality fried falafel in their diet, right? Like the Bedouin
Right.
people in Africa that roam around the desert in the sun and have amazing, awesome vitamin D levels. They make falafel, and it's like traditionally where falafel's from, and it's like fried, and it's awesome because they're going to dry up unless they have that good quality oil. So they need a lot more oil than someone sitting in an office chair, being a paper jockey behind a computer.
Paper jockey. I love it. My gosh, Oscar, we have covered so much ground here. I just want to say that I really appreciate you. I mean, these are small little bite-sized podcasts that we do. And I mean, even in this small amount of time, we've covered a large amount of area just to get a flavor of the kind of things that you do. Before we end here, can you just maybe give us a summary on maybe an overall approach to how you approach it and where do you see people? Can you just tell us a little bit about your clinic?
I'd like to see their eyeballs in person and feel their pulse with my own fingertips if they can make it to Atlanta, but probably a good, I don't know, 20% of my patient base is nowhere near me. And some of them just occasionally come, every once in a while, and then I see them via Zoom, which is entirely possible because you can get a pretty good picture of an eyeball or an eyelid and a tongue if you just go outside and take a picture and then email it to me. That gives me some pretty good data. And I've actually trained people to check their own pulse over the phone within 2 minutes. And, I may not be able to get some of the really subtle details on a pulse, but they can tell me if they can feel a pulse in all three positions and if they can feel it at the top, the middle, or the deep depth. And that's pretty good. So that's where, Sierra Botanic and Collaborative Medicine, we like the compound stuff. And I mostly, at this point, work with chronic disease and especially cancer patients. So I work with Donnie Yance out of Oregon, the Mediri Institute. I do acupuncture. I'll sling some needles sometimes, but more of what I do is consult with people about their condition, which, like we said, is either going to be hot or cold, yin or yang, and too out or too contracted, too damp or too dry, or some combination of those things because of their diet, or lifestyle, or drugs. The drugs can be causing a lot of these symptoms. And we do the low-tech stuff like look at your eyes and tongue and pulse and have an immediate idea. And then we also can help people get some other labs run, like for food allergies, which is a huge, as you know, a huge part of many, more than 50%, more than probably 70% of these skin manifestations often have to do with food and or environmental sensitivities. And I haven't gotten that good to read a pulse and say, you're allergic to bananas based on a pulse.
Well, it's a controversial area, Oscar, and I think maybe that would be a great another podcast to talk about the role of food allergies or food sensitivities and what they do. But I just want to thank you again for joining us today for this podcast. And, we hope we get to learn more and talk to you more about all these unique ways that you approach your patients.
I'm happy to make time to do it. And if you ever are here in Georgia, please swing by and have some tea. And if you want to show me your tongue, that's cool. If not, that's okay too. But please come by and say hello. It's been a pleasure.
Guess what, Hadar?
What?
Tickets are selling so fast for the 6th annual Integrative Dermatology Symposium.
Really? Wow, that's amazing. I mean, each time this event gets better and better.
Yes, it does. And as a special gift to our podcast listeners, all of you, we're offering 15% off registration using the code PODCAST15.
Podcast15 for 15% off. That's a great deal. And prices won't be going any lower this year, so hurry up and get that discount.
So true. And if you haven't joined us in person yet, we can't wait to see you. And this is the year to come have fun at the Grand Casino Resort in Reno, Nevada.
Yes, we are excited to see you, and together with Raja and myself and other practitioners, you will get to connect with everybody, engage with the exciting research and content, and learn what the integrative movement is all about as we get inspired by the Sierra Nevada mountain range and, my friend, downtown Reno.
All that nestling sounds fantastic. Dad joke alert, maybe even skin-tastic. I know we're all about having fun at the symposium, but this year's over the top. Now, I'm not much of a golfer, but for you golfers out there, they have over 40 courses, but they also have rock climbing, equestrian trails, boat tours, pools, arcades, and so much more to just relax.
Oh my gosh, this definitely sounds like a family-friendly getaway. I know I'm bringing the kids. And while they're at the movies, Raja, you and I, my friend, no pun intended here, but we'll be feasting on a lot of nutrition.
That's right. This year's theme has been long awaited. Nourish the gut, nourish the skin, and we'll be delving into nutrition.
Oh my gosh, we can't wait to see you. Come be with us at the IDS on October 27th to the 29th, in person or virtually. See you in Reno.